Welcome to the Buried Dreams podcast. I'm your host, Elle Morris. This episode, I'm excited to introduce Bryon Lloyd, editorial hairstylist in Dallas, Texas, who started venturing out to fashion weeks in Paris and New York, has worked on production for fashion shows, and participates in countless editorial shoots. For interesting artist content and news on the latest Buried Dreams, follow us on Instagram at Buried Dreams Podcast. Enjoy! Let's start with this question. I think I'm going to switch it up. What inspires you, Bryon?
Inspiration comes from everywhere, you know. It could come from nature. It could come from like art you see on the street. I think when it comes to like the medium of hair for me, when I see certain textures or fabrics or things, finishes on like objects or things around me that I like, or I like the form or composition of something, you know.
Is there any activities in Dallas that you do to kind of inspire yourself and like refill the creative well in a sense?
I mean, even outside of like just your environment, even like cultural environments and stuff, you know, when you think about different scenes or eras of culture, it's like, you know, I try to think about what activities I can do to be involved or present in those things as they happen. So I definitely love to like dance or you know.
Do you think that movies inspire you? Like watching
totally.
Old movies and the hairstyles that they have?
Oh yeah. I love even contemporarily watching new films or TV when I see good hair or makeup or even styling, wardrobe styling or set design in any type of show or movie. I definitely am always super impressed because it's the little details that make those types of productions really hit home or, you know, speak to you. It's because it really puts you in an environment or a place. And so even with the hair or any art that I make, it's like I always try to imagine that there's a narrative or maybe a story that is being told, and how can the little details of your production add to that scene or moment, you know.
Do you feel like any certain hairstyles are coming back in this season? From back in the decades?
Yeah, but, you know, I always try to think that nothing goes out of style, and that really when a client asks me what's trending right now, it's like I try to think about what's trending in their life, you know, what stage or era in their life are they in. And depending on what that is, might reflect what hair phase they're in their life, because they should have hair that's relevant to their lifestyle or where they're at in their life. You know, if you're having a crisis, you know, time to shave or start fresh or like cut it off or color it, you know. Maybe you're getting more mature and so you want a more mature look or something you feel more comfortable in like that. Or maybe you know, whatever.
I think that's interesting that you base the outcome of your hairstyling based on the client and like where you think they are in their life and how they describe.
100%. It's also, I think of all the ways maybe as a hairdresser that I coach people subtly in life, and maybe they come in and I try to listen to what they like and what they trust and feel comfortable with and feel secure in, and try to also figure out the things that makes them insecure. And maybe if, you know, I build trust with a client, maybe over time I help them dive deeper into themselves and their own expression and how they want to look, and maybe, you know, help edge them into
new frontiers.
Exactly. I've had clients before who are just like, after maybe my first service or after a while with them, I just built such a rapport or trust that they then trusted the flow of whatever might come out of the hair I give them and how it might affect their day-to-day life. And even teaching some clients, you know, pushing them in their style. It's like,
yeah. I think that, you know, work-life balance is super important, and it's also really important in, you know, living a creative lifestyle, because you need to have that energy. You need to have that energy to, realize the things that you want to do. Like, what does your ideal day look like and your week, and how do you manage social life and all the different aspects of life?
I'm at a really interesting place right now in my life, and I feel like I came out of a long portion of my 20s where I didn't know exactly what I was trying to do with my work or where that would lead. And so I found myself just like understimulated in a lot of ways. And so now that I feel like I really am pursuing something I'm enjoying creatively, like Editorial and Runway, I feel like I have a lot more direction or a target that I can pursue. And in that, it gives me more reason to enjoy maybe setting myself up for success or having more alone time. I try to imagine my dream day. There's a contemporary philosopher right now. His name is Ryan something. I forget his last name, but I saw some content from him recently, and he talked about having the dream day and how important it is to maybe even start your day with the things that are going to make you happy or set you up for success to have the best day. It's like, I try to imagine on the best day ever, I would maybe get up early that day and witness the sunrise. I might work out. I might have a good breakfast or make sure I was showered and wearing something I enjoyed to wear and making sure I felt my best. And then, going and having a productive or fun day or whatever, and all the things that might be included in that. And so I've gotten to a point where I've developed and adopted having like the first moments of my day, the first couple hours, actually my sacred time, the 6 a.m. to 9 a.m. slot is like my sacred time that I spend alone, off of my phone. I try not to get on my phone immediately when I wake up. And I try to take that time to go work out and eat something healthy, prepare food for the day, and make sure I'm just feeling my best, because those are the things that always set myself up for success as far as like having a good or productive day. And it's like, even as an artist, it's hard to make like good art every day, but something like getting up and having a routine that you are consistent or disciplined in is a great way to always start your day with a win, knowing that some days we won't have the wins we're looking for,
How did you start your day today?
Well, today was my off day from the gym. The 2 days I go into the salon and work a week, which are Wednesday and Saturday, I now am on a program where I go to the gym every day besides Wednesday and Saturday, the days I work, because I already work like a 10-hour day those days. Yeah, so I probably didn't give myself as much time as I wanted to this morning to prepare a good meal. Yeah, it is okay. But most mornings, or I try to start with getting up at like 6 or 7, going to the gym for an hour, lifting, coming home, making breakfast, sustaining myself for the day, showering. Yeah. And then, hopefully then it's like I can enjoy having a day off and try and be productive, hopefully, because even for me, like having 5 days off a week, it doesn't mean I don't work on things those days. So pushing myself to make sure I'm staying productive or working on something relevant to my goals is important. But maybe if that were, I guess at the moment, if it's a day I'm going to work, I'm not working out, but still making sure that I'm getting the rest or the sustenance or whatever that I need. And, having the perfect morning and starting the perfect day all really starts with the evening before,
Oh, absolutely. I need to have a good rest. Stop it. Bryon right now is molesting the microphone. Cannot take you seriously.
There is no visual proof of that.
There's no visual proof, but one day there will be. On the second podcast when we start implementing the video form of Buried Dreams. So I wanted to ask you how social media impacts your everyday, and how do you manage it? Where do you feel like you self-destruct in a way?
I have a love-hate relationship with social media just because it's like it has the ability to help artists reach the masses easier, but also it sometimes doesn't help us at all. It also sometimes favors bullshit. And also when it comes to us participating on social media, it's like social media is unhealthy for a lot of people, or it's like unhealthy in our lives. So unfortunately, because I sometimes try to abstain from being on social media just for my own mental health and stuff, I do understand with my work, I have to participate on it to some degree. And it's also like a lot of the time social media is something where when you interact on it and you like are consistent on it, it usually does all right for you. And so I can understand sometimes I'm conflicted in putting out regular enough content, but also being an artist. So knowing there's like a certain degree or level or expectation I have for my own work as far as what I put up. So sometimes I'm not the best with it, but also, you know, it's like sometimes I look at people who maybe don't have anything that great to share, but they know how to work a platform, you know? And it's like, maybe I have something cool to show or share, but it's like at the end of the day, if I can't work a platform as well as I want, then, you know, there's conflict in that. So, but at the end of the day, I try not to let something like social media dictate my value as an artist or anything. So I don't take it too seriously, honestly.
That's really good. I am a victim to social media, honestly. It tears me alive sometimes. And I find myself constantly checking my phone out of habit. And I don't want to be like that.
Oh, I love not touching my phone now.
I love it too. Like sometimes I'll like come home from work and turn on Do Not Disturb and set my alarm. And then I'll have like 5 hours before bed where I just like dilly-dally around my room, putz around, write, or... You know, I want to do more stuff where I don't involve technology in it. So it's like come home from work, you know, in my job, I'm on the computer all day. So, you know, not having that screen time when I get home is like really essential to my recharge time. And I feel like I don't give that to myself enough.
Yes. I mean, I think about some of the most meaningful or enriching moments of my day. And even when I think of those, the most technology that is being involved in that moment is like Bluetooth headphones and music. Like if I'm working out, if I'm lifting weights or something or running, it's like, it's not the technology, it's not the music I'm listening to that is just making this moment. It's me having an experience that I'm participating in with myself. You know, it's not, oh, look at the fact that, you know, like me sharing this online, like being existent and present in any moment is always going to be more meaningful than the interaction of like the technology around you, you know? Mm-hmm. Music is probably the most incorporated thing into daily life, technology wise, that I participate in, but it's like.
Even the noise though can be distracting from being present in the moment.
Mm-hmm. Exactly.
That silence is so
I started doing, recently I started going to cryotherapy sessions where.
How do you like that?
Oh, it's amazing. It's exhilarating. I
feel like I've heard people say that it's really healing.
Is extremely. The last time I went, I was literally, I wasn't in silence. But the first time I went, I remember the lady was talking to me because I was like, hey, I have an appointment, but it's my first time. And she was like, I'll walk you through it. And she was like, some people like me to talk to them, to distract them from the cold. Some people just like to take it and not talk.
What is cryotherapy for people who don't know?
Oh, it's just like cold exposure therapy. And it has a handful of different benefits. It helps in muscle recovery and injury recovery. It stimulates your immune system. It helps with hormonal production or like testosterone and stuff. It actually burns calories. It burns up to 600 calories per session just because it puts your body in a fight or flight like shock mode. And so your body starts producing a lot of things. It's really good for you in that sense. It's good for mental toughness and endurance just because like if you're regularly getting frozen like a couple of days a week and it's like you volitionally can just like sit through that. It's like a tattoo or something. It's a test of like endurance or patience, you know?
If I went for the first time doing that, like not knowing what the experience would be like, I feel like I would want her to talk to me.
Oh yeah,
so
totally.
I can just acclimate and understand the experience.
But the second time I did it, I was like, I kept my AirPods in, and so I didn't actually want to talk to her.
Yeah, yeah.
And so I was blasting some music, and I just was like standing there in this like chamber getting like the freaking nitrous oxide spraying your body. And you're in like a freaking tanning bed situation, standing up.
How long?
In your underwear for 3 minutes.
Just 3 minutes.
But it's like, it goes up to like negative 199 degrees.
Damn.
Like you're getting like frozen.
Is it expensive?
An individual session's like $20.
Oh, that's not bad.
No, but I think I want to get like a membership.
Yeah.
Or like a monthly membership, I think, where you have unlimited everything, which they have like other services too. They have like compression therapy. They have like UV ray saunas and stuff. Like they have some crazy stuff. And it's like all unlimited for like $240 a month. That's like $8 a day. If I could go every day and get freaking cryotherapy, because it's like 3 minutes, you know?
Yeah. Do you think you're allowed to do it that often?
They said the best results come from doing it daily.
Oh, damn.
But most people get good results from like 2 or 3 times a week.
Yeah, I would love to do that.
But I would love to do it every single day.
Finding the time, though, is difficult. And having to drive out there every time.
It's a 10-minute thing.
Okay. I wanted to ask you how alone time affects your self-esteem.
I feel like I've spent a lot of my life. I know in my youth, I was very isolated, introverted, alone. And I felt like that was good and bad, because I think in my early years, I didn't always have the best self-image or think that I had the most value to contribute in the world. So although I had all my brilliance trapped within me, I also didn't view myself as brilliant whatsoever. And so there were times maybe in my early adulthood when maybe I had voids that I tried to fill with validation of other people, or like substance or activities to try and fill like a certain void for myself. But I found that now, like, I can always feel most connected to myself. Like otherwise, because it's just we're consumers, you know, and we consume whatever we give our energy or attention to, whether it's another person or we spend our time on doing substances or experiencing things. And I just find that I can always connect back to myself when I have alone time. I can always find most love and appreciation for myself and hype myself up the best sometimes when I'm alone. Like, sure, people at this point in my life can, you know, validate me or hype me up, but it never gives me the same feeling as when I'm actually proud of something I'm doing, or I'm happy because I'm doing something that I know makes me feel good. And so I'm just at a point now where it's not anybody else's approval I care for anymore. It's just, I know what makes me feel good, and I know what brings the best out of me. And so I strive for that. And that's why I have to separate time now for myself.
Yeah, it's your journey. Do you ever feel like you have too many friends?
I feel like my close circle of friends has gotten smaller and smaller and smaller over time. Although I feel like I have many, many acquaintances and friends just in my community, or even my family. Like, yeah, they're my family, but there's probably only a few that even I feel deeply connected to. At the end of the day, I feel like the most important relationship that I am trying to foster at this point in my life is the relationship to myself. You know, like, I really don't crave even the love of or admiration of other people as much as I crave that growth in the relationship and love for myself, you know, which I don't know if sometimes comes off as like self-centered or whatever, but it's like,
yeah, you only want to hang out with me when I pay to do my hair.
That's not true. I came and danced with you this past weekend.
I'm just kidding. I'm kidding.
But I know that, like, I don't know. And it's like, the thing is, when I can make the space for myself, it makes me feel more emotionally available to give time to other people.
And the people that you want to give it to as well.
Right. I've become super selective on how I spend my time and my mental and emotional energy at this point. You have to be conscious and conservative of it.
Yeah. I feel like my biggest downfall is that I love to dance. And whenever you go dancing...
Your downfall, or you fall down?
I fall down because I'll get wasted. No.
Hey, everything is good in moderation, even moderation.
Yeah. And I feel like, you know, that one time a week when I go out and I have a few drinks and I go dancing, it's really fun. But then I have this guilt trip I put over on myself. It's like, I guess I want to be able to do all that and be around that scene and not have any alcohol or substances, and have fun while I'm there.
Is there, are you scared of indulging in substance?
No, it's not that I'm scared of indulging in substance.
Or do you not like how much of it you indulge in or what?
I can never just have 2 drinks. It's always 4 or 5,
Which I think is okay. I think a problem for me most of my 20s was I was filling a lot of my time with overindulging many, many times a week, or most days of the week I was overindulging. And, I spent a lot of my 20s trying to find a life of balance. I always thought, be moderated during the week, work hard during the week, rest hard during the week, and then have fun still, maybe on the weekend or a couple of evenings a week. But I've actually really recently come to a realization that versus living a life of balance, I want to live a life of extremes. And by extremes, when I'm home in my regular Dallas life, I want to be extremely disciplined. I want to be extremely moderated. I want to rest extremely well. I want to work out and train extremely hard. But when I'm on vacation or I'm traveling or I go have a unique experience, I want to extremely indulge.
You're going to walk a flock of flame.
I'm trying to,
go hard in the mother.
Yeah, no, exactly. I feel I don't know. I think having, especially for me being extremely emotional, I think when I can feel things in extremes, it stimulates me the most. And that doesn't always mean I have to be extremely high on a substance. It sometimes means I want to have trained or worked out extremely hard that morning. I want to have rested extremely hard the night before to have prepared me to have an extremely tough workout. So then I can feel extremely good about myself.
And to prepare you to have an extremely wild night out.
Exactly. But I think
6 nights on, 1 night off.
No, even for me now, I'd really like to only have an extreme night, maybe once or twice a month, really.
Yeah.
Because I found that just even indulging in stuff for me, it's it doesn't have the same energy for me anymore. I just don't find myself having as much enjoyment when I indulge or overindulge too regularly, because I think feeling those highs or experiencing those highs feel good when you're not doing them all the time.
Exactly. And I mean, I don't drink during the week. I don't take any substances, and usually I try to rest pretty well during the week because I have a full-time job. But even doing that 1 night per week really throws me off. Because
I found at this point it does the same. I can't just do a really hardcore Saturday night, because it just means maybe I'm just getting older. I don't know, but I think it was like this for me when I was overindulging 5-6 nights a week. It was easy for me to recover on just 4 hours of sleep and then go into the next day. But I found that my day to day, I was only operating at 80%. And I don't want to operate at 80%. I want to operate at 100 or 110% every day.
It's the 4 days after, up until Wednesday, I start to feel
you're finally just getting back in.
I'm finally just now getting back in Thursday and Friday. And then it's I'm all, refueled again.
And then you do it again on Saturday, and then you're just in the same cycle,
But it's for motivated people who have big dreams for themselves or whatever. And, there are some people who can aspire and attain their dreams and be, partying all the time. But I don't know, for me and my mental health sake, it's I have these big dreams for myself and, in my career and also in my creative path. And it's a full-time job plus a part-time job. And then I'm trying to socialize and I'm trying to take care of my, diet and fitness and sleeping enough. And it's just way too much. And I feel recently I'm just really struggling to manage it all, and I'm feeling tired.
And I'm not saying that what I'm doing right now is ideal or will work for everybody. But I know for me and how I have used my time and energy and attention the last 7 years of my life, that it hasn't always served me the best. And if anything, has prolonged me really reaching a level of elevation or enlightenment for myself. And I just know for me personally at this point that the high of performing highly regularly is a better high for me than the high I have when I'm overindulging. But it also means that when I go do it, that like I feel no guilt or shame for going as hard as I want. Because really part of going as hard as I want is I want to go hard in the workout this morning, or I really just like, especially as far as like me making art on a daily basis, like I want to be in the best mental, physical space to make the best art regularly. And that for me is my purpose, is making beautiful things. And if I am only operating at 90%, it's harder for me to be happy or as proud of what I'm doing. And that's just a thing for me. No.
So you just were recently out of the country for the first time in your life.
Well, a year and a half ago, I left the country for the first time, but it's kind of hard. Like I wouldn't totally count it, but like a year and a half ago, me and my uncle and my two brothers and all their spouses, my uncle and all my Filipino family lives in San Diego. So when I was in a family reunion over there, we walked across the border to Tijuana and spent a weekend in Tijuana, and that was a vibe. But that was my first experience out of the country, but it was like, it didn't feel the same because it's like, we just walked across a fence and we were in Mexico, and it was, we live in Texas right now. So it's like, I already experienced so much Hispanic culture that it didn't feel like anything different than what I've experienced in Texas a lot of my life. But I consider the trip I just did my first real experience really outside of the continent and the country.
And what were you there for?
Well, it was funny. That was about 3 weeks ago. And on my 27th birthday, I was on a plane to Paris, France for the first time. And I was out there to do hair for Paris Fashion Week, on top of enjoying my 27th birthday outside of the country for the first time, alone, no friends, anything. And it was hands down probably the most enriching experience of my life so far.
It's cool, ain't it?
It was unreal.
It's unreal. It's so stylish, isn't it?
Oh, it was beautiful out there. Super inspiring. You don't have to plan or do anything. I've found at this point traveling that you don't have to do touristy things. Any beautiful city, you should be able to walk down the street and feel the vibe of the city. Like in a place like Paris as well, it's like you have some of these contemporary art structure buildings that are beautiful, but also walk down any street and you're walking past 1,000-year-old buildings and structures and apartments and whatever. And it is incredibly inspiring, just the aesthetic and feeling walking through the streets.
I know. I always say I'm a European girl. Like
European.
I want to die. I would die in Europe. Please take me to a nice little house on the Portuguese coast and I'll die there. Seriously.
Definitely vibing in Paris. I felt like I have a little bit of Parisian in me. I felt like I fit in quite well. If anything, when I got off the plane, I think even my outfit and my vibe and energy, I felt like people thought I was Parisian. So everybody was trying to speak to me in French, which was hilarious because I didn't study any French before I went. And so people are like trying to speak to me. And I just remember like trying to communicate, and I was just like, and they're like, he's Parisian. They're like, he's Parisian. He's being so short. He is not saying anything. And really, I was just like, oh, I don't know how to communicate to anybody, but it was amazing. It was challenging.
That's a compliment.
It was a vibe, I think after a few days in, I got the hang of things and I was like, oh, I could live here full time.
Mm-hmm. Did you make any friends?
I made many friends from many countries, different backgrounds, all there for different reasons, But it was cool meeting and making new friends. But also, I was there doing hair for Fashion Week. And so even the 2 shows I did participate in, I remember making friends at the shows I was at. And even after my first show, me and some of my peers, we went to the bar next door to the venue. And I remember sitting at a table with 7 other hairdressers. 2 of them were from Italy, 2 were from London, 1 was from Spain. Even funny enough, there was a hairdresser named Bryon from Houston, Texas. And so we had 2 Texas Bryons at the table with 6 other multi-country artists. And we were all in the same place at the same time, working the same show, pursuing the same thing. And so it felt really cool sitting at a table of other artists who were there for the same mutual reason. And we were all sharing our knowledge and experience in the industry and working shows. And it just seemed really enriching learning from people from different corners of Europe.
It is really one of the most special experiences to be sitting at a table or just being involved in some sort of activity or program with people from all different walks of life and all different countries.
Well, it's a beautiful thing because like one thing I really love in Europe that is not as much a thing in America is, well, especially in Dallas, Dallas is such a work-centric culture, like such a workaholic culture out here. And immediately when you meet somebody in Dallas, the first thing they do to get to know you or that they ask you is, what do you do for work? And it's like so funny because in Europe, life isn't just about work. When people meet you, they're like, oh, what do you do for fun? And so when I met friends on the street or I made friends in Paris, a lot of them were there maybe for a work situation. Maybe they're just traveling or they're just like in Paris for the weekend having fun. But it was also cool to have the contrast of meeting people who were literally there for the same reason I was there. And there felt like a unity and a sense of community amongst them,
Do you want to go back to Paris Fashion Week next season or next year?
I plan to be back next season. So that would be 6 months from now. So I think end of September or beginning of October, I will be back in Paris. I was kind of on the fence between, do I want to try out London next time or go back to Paris? But I think I'll do Paris again just because it'd be nice to build even more familiarity since I've been there before. Yes. I think, I just want to, and the thing is I spent all my time in Paris and really getting to know the city, which I really enjoyed, but I'd really love to explore some of the different corners of France too. I'd love to go to the south of France. I even hear that like whatever corner of France is connected to a different country, there's like different dialects of French. Like the corner that touches Germany is like a German-French mix of French. Mm-hmm. And then there's like Catalonia where it like
Andorra,
connects. And the different corners of France that touch different countries have like French that is mixed with whatever country's language it touches,
Yeah, it's super interesting. And also like Switzerland too is cool like that because you have Italian, French, and German. And it's so weird. It's like such a small country, but it has it's such a melting pot of different languages and people.
Well, the funny thing is in Europe is that every country touching each other is like, in America is like a state touching each other. So
I know, it's insane.
So like where we're touching as Texans or in Texas, we're touching Oklahoma and things are only a little different in like Oklahoma versus like Texas or like, whatever states touch us. But for them, it's literally you go a state away in Europe and you're in a completely different country with different culture and language. I mean, the thing is in America, all of America speaks English. You might have different dialects, but at the end of the day, it's like we're all one unified country, I guess.
We are all one unified country. And I think there are differences in the regions because anytime I go to an airport, I'm always staring everyone down because they have different styles, I would say. Right. But the diversity of style or maybe the amount of difference it is between each state is drastically different than that of Europe. Europe, you go to different places, there's a drastic difference in the way people look, talk, speak, dress, act.
Even lifestyle,
Lifestyle. It's super, super interesting. And yeah, I love Europe. And I'm so glad you got to enjoy it. Is there any other countries that you have on the radar?
I mean, at the moment, I think, doing runway hair and stuff, doing Fashion Week. The cool thing is I always look at Fashion Week now as kind of like a pilgrimage for me as a hairdresser because, every fashion season is like 6 months apart for the most part. And even before going to Paris for the first time this past month, the last 13 months I've been doing runway, I've went to New York 3 times. And every time I get to go, it becomes like such a growing experience. And really, I consider it literally a pilgrimage for me as a hairdresser because I get to go and participate in these shows where I am amongst other hairdressers who are all almost like, a pilgrimage is going to a religious place to practice your your devotion to your faith or whatever. And if hairdressing was my faith, I get to go to this region and practice literally my artistry amongst other mutual artists of hair and get to test out my abilities and knowledge and grow in my networking and connections. And so
would you say that's the highest level of hairdressing or hairstyling? Fashion week?
Maybe. I think it can be one of the most influential because I think when it comes to Fashion Week, Fashion Week and fashion brands being able to show off their collections every season, it's not just showing off clothes, but it's showing off culture and art. And I think all the different types of artists that come together and collaborate to make a fashion show and a collection look its best and convey its message the best to the world, especially with social media now. It's like as soon as a runway show happens, it's like it's publicized across the world and everybody gets to see the newest Balenciaga collection or the newest, whatever.
Versace.
And whichever one. And it's like, yeah, people might be like, ooh, their collection was really cute, but I really loved the hair in it, or I really loved the makeup, or I loved the set design that they had for the show. And I think with that, it can really transcend more than just hair, and it can influence more than just hairdressing, Because at the end of the day, I don't think it's the pinnacle of hair, but I think is very contributive to art and fashion and culture. Because clothes and hair and makeup, that's how people express themselves.
Yeah.
And so I think in that sense, it can have influence on how people see style and self-expression and stuff. But at the end of the day, the hair for fashion shows is always supposed to complement the collection that is being shown. At the end of the day, it's not the Bryon Lloyd hair show. It's whatever brand it is. And at the end of the day, it's about making hair that is cohesive and brings out the best of the collection. Versus, I think maybe the pinnacle sometimes when it comes to hair can be in the maybe in more like editorial or avant-garde, like photo shoot styling, or for different campaigns, because that's where I feel like hair can play more of the focus versus just like the fit,
So I have 2 questions for you.
Go ahead.
First, what designers have you worked for in Fashion Week? And the second question is, how did you get to Paris Fashion Week?
Well, I did my first runway show 13 months ago. It's funny because if we're even backtracking even more, I only got into editorial and runway maybe in the last year and a half. I have been professional hairdresser in the industry for the last 7 years. And I think I found like very early in hair, maybe a year and a half in, maybe 2 years in professionally, I found myself then creatively understimulated as a hairdresser and kind of unhappy with my choice to get into hair. So I found myself honestly doing hair for most of my career the last 7 years, just as a means of paying my bills or supporting a overly indulgent lifestyle, which didn't lead to me feeling stimulated or happy and probably led to me continuing to overindulge. I was really grateful that we had quarantine because during that time I was just freelancing, just riding my Harley to my clients' houses and doing their hair and collecting money from the government, just so I could get by. But doing that, I had a lot of time to reflect on myself and what mattered most to me in my life. I was 25 during quarantine, and I was kind of like, what do I want out of the rest of my 20s and what matters to me in my life? And at the time, one of the biggest things that I knew had been missing in my 20s was my creative stimulation and my creativity and my artistry, because I had just been doing very basic or, bread and butter Dallas hair. And for me as an artist, I didn't feel tapped into my creativity or like I was pushing any real boundaries for myself. And so during quarantine, when I really discovered and realized I could be doing editorial or runway, I knew that's what I wanted to chase. And so my mentor, once I got back into the salon setting in 2021, Clint Matoney of Lost Hairdressers, he knew what I was trying to get into, and he himself is a curator of editorial styling of hair and stuff. And he had connections, and he was like, who wants to go to New York Fashion Week and do hair? And I was like, sign me up. And so 13 months ago, fast forward to 13 months ago. He pulled some strings and he got me into my first show. He got me on the list to work the Dion Lee fashion show in New York 13 months ago. And I remember going for the first time. I had no idea what to expect, the template for shows, what to have in my hair kit, what techniques to come prepared with, anything and everything. Like, I had no clue.
Nerve-wracking.
A little. He just was like, hey, bring as diverse of a toolkit as you can bring. He was like, just be helpful on set. Do not stand around, and be flexible and, attentive, and assist whoever needs assisting, whatever. He also told me, he was like, get a waiter's half apron. He said, wear one of those when you're working and people will think you're an OG. And I was like, sold. So when I was there, I remember going to a pizza supply, like restaurant supply store, and finding a half apron literally like an hour before I went to the Dion Lee show. And I went in there and I was like, all right, I don't have no idea what I'm doing, but I'm going to fake it till I can make it. And I remember meeting the lead hairdresser for the show at the time, Mustafa Yanez, one of my favorite editorial and runway stylists at the moment. And I just remember doing my best on set and feeling like I had a good connection with him, and he admired some of my attentiveness. And I think he also noticed or knew that it was like my first show and that I was not totally conscious of the etiquette I'm supposed to practice at a show, but he saw the eagerness that I had, and I think he admired that a lot. And even after my first show with him, he offered me a show in Paris, and I was like, yeah, I'm not going to be there anytime soon, but thanks for the offer. But I knew immediately coming back from my first show, I was like, okay, next, that was my first big win trying to tap into this side of the industry. And it was so inspiring and eye-opening to me. I had never in my life been east of the Mississippi River. And then there I was going to New York for the first time to go do my first show for New York Fashion Week. And it just kind of opened up the idea and possibilities and potential in my career and in my work. And I just knew, hey, Fashion Week comes in 6 months. What can I do for the next 6 months? And I came back to Dallas. Within a month, through Clint, my mentor at the time, he connected me with a local fashion designer, Melissa Taylor. And he was like, hey, my friend's trying to put on a show. Maybe you could help her out. And he connected me to her, and me and one of my good friends, Justin Doherty. We met with her, kind of, he was there also with me at the show, him and also one of my friends, Kemi Adejumo. And I talked to Mustafa Yanez and convinced him to let both of them stay to shoot BTS photography. And so the whole time they were there, they were able to capture some good BTS of me working at my first show, but also they were really documenting everything and how the shows were run and the template. They took photos of the call sheet, everything. So literally coming back, we had a lot of this basic knowledge on how shows run and how to run a show.
But that's kind of crazy, honestly, because the fact that they just let 3 random people in that you recommended.
Oh, I wasn't random. I was on the list.
You were on the list. I remember you brought in 3 friends. That's insane.
The funny thing was I went in and they're like, hello. And I was like, hi, I'm here to do hair. They're like, cool. And then they look behind me and see Kemi and Justin. And they're like, are y'all doing hair too? And they're like, no, we escorted him here. We're moral support. And they're like, okay, second story or second floor to follow the signs. And so we get in and I'm like, hey guys, like you're not on the list. So if they kick you out, this is not my show. Sorry. And as soon as I met Mustafa and I shook hands with him and stuff, I convinced him to let Justin and Kemi stay. And so they got a visual experience of how it ran. And so
cool.
I remember when we came back and we got connected to Melissa, we not only approached her and I was like, hey, I can do the hair for your show, but we also helped produce like a good portion of her show. And we brought on an entire production team, photo, video, production, hair, makeup, everything. It's honestly so crazy how much of a community was brought together for that Melissa Taylor show. Everyone was pitching in, pro bono, their, expertise. And you guys pulled off this great big show that people keep talking about. Like, honestly, every time I do an episode, something gets brought up about Melissa Taylor. Anytime I hang out with people, we're like, oh yeah, this is my friend. You were also at the Melissa Taylor show. Yeah.
And this is crazy. Like that event, I mean, and the one that followed it, you being a part of it with her. I mean, it's been so powerful for the city of Dallas and like the creatives and the people who are interested in the creative world here.
I know that, we all did it for free, but we were excited to kind of put some of the newfound knowledge and experience we had to the test. And I think immediately we made something really beautiful with the little knowledge we had. I mean, I remember packing out the garage space we used for the fashion show with like 400 plus 500 people in a room to see this local designer. And I just remember being like, wow, this was wildly successful for our first time putting together a production. But
I'd like to sit on this for a second and ask you like, your, opinion or advice for artists that, don't have the experience, but maybe they kind of know the tools to set it up, how they can, use that to build their own resume.
Oh, I mean, the thing is like Dallas, I feel like versus obviously like a New York or LA sometimes has a lot less of a healthy or like fertile creative scene. And so even for me, like I just felt like a lot of my early hair career, I wasn't around any photographers or models or stylists or creative people. I was just around hairdressers who were trying to make their money and go spend it at the bar, And so once I really started trying to dig into that and I started finding my local creatives, we all are hungry to grow and we're all hungry to grow our portfolios and our skill and everything. And when you have like-minded people who just want to grow as artists, it's easy to come together and try and put together something beautiful. If there's a word of advice I'd give any creative in a community, it's just to find the like-minded people around you and to kind of work together to build ideas and, create stuff, Obviously, part of the process of making good material or building your portfolio, part of it is just reps. I remember coming back from that Dion Lee show, my first show, and even besides the Melissa Taylor show, I think the Melissa Taylor show was good because it gave me some good first-hand experience. Like, yeah, people saw online that I did the Dion Lee show, but coming back home and getting to do Melissa Taylor locally and then bring on a lot of my peers locally to work on it, it helped me build a lot of respect and rapport amongst my local community. So I think after that, a lot of people were excited to see me continue growing and to, I think it made me a lot more sought after to collaborate with. And then it became something where people were regularly wanting to participate with me. I remember a year before the Melissa Taylor show, I was doing my first couple of shoots and it's like, how do I get anybody to want to collaborate with me? I don't even have a portfolio. And it initially started with me doing 2 or 3 shoots that I had to plan out myself, design myself, find wardrobe myself, photograph myself. I literally taught myself how to shoot photography so I could capture my first shoots, just so then I could have a baseline for people to start wanting to work with me. But that Melissa Taylor show and Dion Lee were both like great beginning places that like then set myself up for people to all want to work with me. And then I remember last summer doing like at least 20 plus photo shoots and test shoots with different local artists and creatives. And that just helped me continue growing my portfolio. And so I remember that whole 6 months after my first show with Dion Lee, I came back around to fashion season again. And I was like, all right, time to go back, time to get more work, whatever. And I remember going back and now without anybody or Clint to pull strings to get me into a show, I had a portfolio for myself and more contacts than before. And I was able to then get like 4 shows, I remember my second time in New York Fashion Week last September. I then got to do Dion Lee again with Mustafa Yanez. I got to do Kate Spade presentation for the first time, which was super cool and one of my best paying like gigs I got to do up until then. I did a couple smaller shows also that season, but again, it was like I was able to go back and like I said, it was a pilgrimage because I got to go back and test my growth that I had. And, for me, I tripled the shows that I did from the previous season on top of I got paid more that season, you know, so, and grew in my connections and relationships even more. So then even coming back from then, it was like, okay, 6 more months till the next fashion season. What's next? And I remember then coming back and I got to do my second Melissa Taylor collection for that fall. And that show we actually, because the first show was free admission, that next show we charged tickets for. And again, we still packed out a room and made an even better show with even better production. And we even had enough funding to be able to pay all our artists who worked on it. My whole hair team, I was able to pay out working on it, which was amazing because as much as artists need experience and portfolio work, we also need to pay our bills, you know? So it was really beautiful to be able to, one, bring in people of my local community and uplift them and collaborate with them, but also to show them their worth and value by compensating them. And so then did a few more editorials locally. And then this past February, I got to go to New York for the 3rd time. And this time I did 7 shows. Got to do Dion Lee again. I got to do Alexander Wang, Christian Cohen, Ekhaus Lada, Adiam, Kim Shui.
Did you get to see all the designers in real life?
Yeah, but the funny thing is when you think about a designer, it's like you think of the clothes and the identity and the aesthetic. Sometimes you don't even know what the designer looks like, you know? It was funny. It was probably not even until the 2nd or maybe this 3rd time working Dion Lee that I recognized him really. And I'm like, oh, it's a muscular Australian dude, you know? So, or even, yeah. So it's like, it's funny because even like brand identity, it's like, you don't even think of the face of the designer half the time. You just think about
the name and
the name or the
style of the
fits
clothing
on the models, you know? But it was really good getting to work in New York again. And this time doubling the amount of shows I was able to get into. And still getting some good paid shows. It was funny, even this past time in New York, getting to work alongside new artists, new hairstylists alongside them. And some of them saying, I'm like, oh, are you doing any other shows? Blah, blah, blah. Have you done any other shows this week? And so many stylists I met who were like, oh, this is my first show. And I remember literally a year ago being at Dion Lee and people are like, oh, what other shows are you doing? And I'm like, this is my first show. And they're like, that's cute. And not cute in like a sarcastic way, but cute as in everybody has to start somewhere. Mm-hmm. And that's why I believe in the idea of reps and hitting the bag, because all that really matters is growing and challenging yourself to do more and do better and try and continue to outgrow yourself. And so it was interesting this time meeting first time hairstylists going and doing their first show, but also being like, wow, I have some decent experience under my belt. Okay, it's your first show. I'm going to leave you these 3 pieces of advice, and feeling like now I'm becoming somebody who can help others and uplift others, you know, who were like me once, you know? And so it was really good continuing to grow in my connections. But I also knew that after my second New York Fashion Week, I worked with Mustafa Yanez again on Dion Lee. And after that one, he was like, are you going to be in Paris? I have a bunch of shows for you. And he offered me like 4 or 5 shows. And I remember again saying, I don't plan to go to Paris this season. But I was like, keep me in mind for next season, because after my second one and he offered me shows both times in Paris, I was like, okay, that's the next step. Next season, I'm going to go to New York again. But also I'm buying a ticket and I'm going to Paris and I'm going to get some shows in Paris. And so after New York, trying to tap into all my connections I had made in the last year and having bought a ticket to Paris and just like, so it was really magical and cool to kind of had set that goal for myself to go out there and try and get some shows and some work my first time. And so it made it really special turning 27, going and being offered. I really got offered 5 different shows when I went to Paris this time. And of the 4 initial ones I got offered, I accepted 3 of them. One of them was overlapping with another, so I took 3. One of them I got released from, but I got to do GmbH, which is a German brand that's pretty cool. And then a newer brand, EENK. And both were great shows. I was worried maybe initially like, ooh, is Paris going to be a whole nother level of hairdressing? Like, are they just going to be hardcore, you know? And I remember going in and feeling like, wow, I've built enough experience and confidence in the last year that I remember working them and feeling extremely proficient and confident. And if anything, like I was still able to be very effective and even guide some of my new peers around me in Paris, like at a show. I remember, funny thing though, my first night in Paris, I went to bed early so I could get up early the next day and explore, because I didn't have any shows scheduled for the first 4 days in Paris. So I was like, cool, well, it's my 27th birthday. I'm going to explore for 4 days and then go do 2 shows before I leave. And I remember my first night there, it was funny. I go to bed early and I didn't have my notifications on. So I missed an email and I got an offer last minute, my first night, offering me to do the Givenchy show, which would have been amazing. That's huge. But like, I woke up at 7 a.m. and emailed them and I'm like, yes, put me on. And they're like, we already filled the spot, you know?
That sucks.
It's okay.
You'll get it. You'll get it
At the end of
year.
the day, I hindsight look at it, and it lets me know I was on their radar and they hit me up, you know? So it's not unattainable by any means. Actually, what I think going to Paris was I was a little last minute hitting up all my contacts that I had made. And so I think a lot of the hair teams in Paris were already full. But the fact that they even reached out to me as a last minute alternate to fill in for it says a lot, you know?
For sure.
So I just think maybe next time I go to Paris, I'm going to try and maybe 2-3 weeks earlier than that, even try and reach out and try and even get more work. But the thing is, most of the shows I've worked up until this point, I've always worked at the bottom tier, because there's like, within a show, there's always a lead hairdresser leading the hair. Then there's maybe a core team of like 3, 4, maybe 5 assistants directly assisting the lead. And then there's maybe 10 plus assistants underneath that who are just kind of assisting everything. And I've always been on that bottom tier. I think the time I did the Kate Spade show, I was that core team. So obviously I got paid more for that show. There was also, I remember last fall, we had Louis Vuitton came and did a capsule collection at the Perot Museum here in Dallas. And one of my local peers, Walter Fuentes, to be the lead hair for it. And I remember he reached out to me and one of our local peers, Marina Buchanan, to be his first assistants for that show. And so these times when I got to work as in the core team, I got paid like 2 or 3 times as much as I do usually for all the New York shows when I'm at the bottom tier. And so now planning ahead, you know, Fashion Week's here in 6 months. And going back next time, my real goal is to build my connections even more and try and tap in ahead of time so that I can join a lead hairdresser as part of their core team. And I can basically go on tour with them essentially for whichever Fashion Week, doing all the shows they do as a core team member, where then versus getting $200 a show, I'm getting $500-$600 whatever per show, you know, on top of I'm really getting to tour and do bigger brands with these bigger leads, you know? So that's kind of my goal going into the next season, is working my way up that ladder a bit more, getting more shows and getting paid better for them and doing bigger brands that I'm even more excited to work with, on top of getting to explore, you know, new territory. So
yeah. So would you say that is your Barry dream, or do you have something else that you're kind of focusing on in the next few years?
When I think the next few years, I mean, ideally, and just like I described, kind of the hierarchy that exists in like a show, especially for hair, is ideally down the line, I'm trying to be the lead, you know? I'm trying to be the guy who makes the big ticket and then, you know, allocates that money to my team and to my assistants, you know? But I want to be that guy with the name for, you know, doing the key hair for these big shows. You know, that would be ideally the dream, because then at that point, it's like, whether it's a Fashion Week collection being shown off, or, you know, hopefully then it's like I have the rapport or respect in the hair industry that, you know, I can be the lead hair for different campaigns, even outside of Fashion Week. Like maybe there's just a new campaign for whatever brand or whatever, like, like maybe a brand like a Chanel or whatever, or even like if it was Vogue, you know, it's who are they going to hit up to do the hair for the cover? You know, it's like, I want to be the guy versus just being the assistant to that guy, you know?
Yeah. I wonder how I could get involved in the cover shoot of Vogue.
I mean, the big thing is
creative direction.
Well, no, I mean, the big thing on even getting involved in that is if you're not the lead, it's like, how do you become assistant to the lead, or how do you become assistant to the assistant of the lead? And part of that is connections. Part of that is building rapport. I know that every time I get to go and participate on a show or a collection, that like, it's up to me to make my name known, make my presence on a set known. Because if you do good work, if you do good assisting, if you're attentive and you help make a show or a photo shoot go smoothly, whoever's leading it, whoever's the lead hair is going to remember that, and they're going to want you to be there to assist them, because every good lead has a good assistant underneath them. So slowly but surely working my way up that ladder until eventually maybe I'm that guy that everybody wants to do the hair for their projects. So.
And how long would you want to be in that position for? I feel like
a lead?
Once you get to the top, I mean, what more is there?
I mean, you're there, you know?
You're there, you just stay there?
I mean, at that point, it's like you just do it for fun, because I mean, you're getting paid well. You're traveling internationally, working with like big brands and getting to enjoy the fun and the creativity of that. But it's like at that point, it's just saying yes to whatever you want to do and just doing your best work and doing work that I think is influential, you know, or work that is inspiring.
What is the typical age range of these leads?
Oh, I always feel like the leads are older, you know? So it's like the youngest leads I've ever seen for a show or for a campaign are like 35.
Yeah.
I always feel like the leads for a lot of shows are like, I don't know, mid 40s. So when you think about any of these leads who are very good, very talented hairdressers, it's like, you've probably been doing it for a minute.
You need that 20 years of...
You need that 15, 20 years of experience and hard work to really have built your name and the rapport in the community that they would acknowledge you as somebody to give that position to.
Are you willing to wait that long?
I like we said in the beginning about the candle that burns at both ends, burns brighter but faster. I acknowledge I can't live like a rock star if I want to reach that goal. I have to look at this as not a sprint, but a marathon, and having myself in the physically and mentally in the healthiest state I can be in so I can make the best quality work consistently over time. So that 10, 15 years from now, I am that guy. I am him.
I'm right there with you.
You know? And so that's where for me right now, I just know that I know what I need to do on the day to day and the biannually, you know, fashion week for me to really kind of get there one day. And it's a long-term goal because it's not going to happen overnight. It's not going to be like next season I'm going to be lead of a show. Maybe I'll continue. I know Melissa Taylor built so much respect and rapport with her that she trusts me probably exclusively to do the hair for her shows forever. Mm-hmm. But like internationally and stuff, I know it's going to be a long road, but I'm excited to get there. And I know part of the beauty of that is the process of getting there, not just being there.
Exactly. Sweet, sweet poetry. So you're here in Dallas and you've lived here your whole life.
Maybe the last 18 years. I moved here when I was like in 5th grade. My father was a Marine. So
from Oklahoma?
Kansas,
that's right.
So I've lived in like 8 southern states. I've lived in California. But like I moved here in 5th grade and I consider Texas my home. I've had all my coming of age years here. I've become an adult here. I've made most of my mistakes here, conscious mistakes here. But I've also learned a lot of lessons here. And I found maybe at the moment somewhat of a place of contentment here. It's like I said, I believe I really want to live in not a life of balance, but a life of extremes. And so when I'm here in Dallas doing my thing, living my everyday life, I want to be extremely disciplined and train extremely hard and rest extremely hard, because it's the 6 months in between these fashion weeks that I prepare myself to go. And just so that when I do go, I can go do my best work. And when I'm not working at a fashion week, I can be truly enjoying myself and indulging in another city or in a trip, you know?
Mm-hmm. What do you see for the Dallas scene?
I mean, Dallas has a lot of room for growth. I don't think at the moment, like the scene is totally as fertile as I'd like it to be.
What does fertile mean to you?
I guess just there's not as much opportunity creatively. There's not as much of a creative scene as I'd like to see.
Financially speaking as well?
Well, there's plenty of money here in Dallas. There's plenty of money here, but I think a lot of that money always gets fed into commercial projects. So not always the most creative, just what's going to generate income or revenue. I think some of that money in Dallas acknowledges that they have to like spend that money on creativity and on the artists to make relevant work as the taste and culture in Dallas changes. I believe that Dallas really, in reality, is going to become the South Coast. I just know it's going to be like maybe another 5 years, maybe 10. And that's another reason I'm not totally going to move out of Texas anytime soon.
You mean the South Coast?
As in, there's LA, there's New York on each coast, but Dallas is becoming the South Coast because, so much of
Austin, maybe more.
Well, Austin's becoming kind of more of a tech city, but Texas in general, because all businesses, all finance, everything is moving here, A lot of LA's business, a lot of LA's people, a lot of New York's people and businesses are all moving down here. So it's like, the thing is, there's people with different tastes, different needs as far as culture and whatever. They're all coming here. And so they're going to crave artistry. They're going to crave culture. They're going to crave like good fashion and fertile grounds, And so with all that coming here, we have an opportunity to really make something
of ourselves,
And so that's why I'm not totally ready to just go. Like, people ask me all the time, so are you going to move to New York? And I'm like, no. Like, if I lived in New York, I couldn't own a home. I own a home here in Dallas. You know what I mean?
I also have that same intuition about Dallas. It's been a very interesting experience coming here because when I first moved here, I felt very discouraged. I felt like there wasn't a scene here. Slowly but surely, I found each and every single one of you, and you guys are all connected, but it's very much so on the underground. There's not a lot of highly promoted artistic things happening here, except for, Dallas art museum events or whatever. But I think once you get to know the stream of people, you start to know what's going on here. And then, I don't know, I just see Dallas becoming something like Chicago.
Well, because Dallas, like I said, Dallas has money, which means they can fund certain things. They can fund a scene being more prevalent or mature, but it also is the thing is, I sometimes, even outside of hair or fashion or culture, it's like, when you think about art, who decides what art's valuable? Who decides if a painting is $1 million or not? People with money, So who decides if Bryan's hair is worth this much or that much? The people who will pay for it. So it takes probably convincing those people, unfortunately, that our art or our scene or our creativity is valuable, or relevant, So the thing is, I know that's going to require patience, but I think the thing that honestly ends up happening in Dallas, I've noticed in the last few years, is whenever we have a great emerging artist, a lot of them move to New York or move to LA. They leave. And so then we end up stuck back with like maybe a less mature scene. And we need to really make Dallas a place that like really fosters those people to continue growing and gives them a good reason to stay.
And how do you think that can be done?
Unification, like us all demanding the space.
I think it's talking with the government.
How so?
Well, the public sector, like the Dallas Center of Culture and Arts, starting the conversation with them and asking them, what is your vision for Dallas in the future? And having that conversation and come to them as artists. I think they have a lot of art things going on. And I would really like to understand like what the opportunities are for funding for artists so we can get more of these events going and just really develop the scene. I think that it can happen. I really, truly believe that.
Yeah, I just think it's going to come within the creative community because at the end of the day, like I said, the people with the money, they decide if it's worth anything. So it's like, I don't want to look for that money from them because it's going to be harder to convince them. But
sometimes they give money just for these enriching experiences for people. It's not necessarily whether it's going to generate revenue or whatever. It creates culture.
They don't care about culture in Dallas. Dallas ain't about culture. Dallas is about money. But that's why it's up to us to kind of set that new standard. But that's why it's not going to happen overnight.
But of course, it's going to take 10, 15 years.
Yeah. So that's why I'm just like, the thing is, though, if I went to New York, I could go out there and I'd probably do amazing work if I was in New York. I'd have more opportunity. I'd have a more open and fruitful community that would support my growth. But also, I want to stay here so that I can be part of that foundation and that community here. And I think, when that really pops off in Dallas, it's like I'll have been part of it from the beginning.
Of course, maybe you'll be part of the history books.
Hey, that's what I'm looking for.
The history book of the Buried Dreams Collective.
There you go. And so, having Dallas as my headquarters and home base, I have my home here that I own, my family with me, and it acts as a good place for me to be centered and kind of grow on the day-to-day, while I also have these moments when I can go travel to Fashion Week and kind of like continue growing internationally or outside of Dallas or Texas, But also it's the things I do on the day-to-day or week-to-week or month-to-month here that I think helps continue to grow the scene here,
So your career is in hairdressing or hairstyling. I keep calling it hairdressing. Is that a wrong term?
No, that's appropriate.
Okay. So you have your career here in hairstyling, and then you also do hairstyling as like a creative thing. So you're like laying down right now.
I'm in a nice little like thriller pose right now.
You are. So with the career, how do you separate the two with the career and also doing hairstyling as a fun, hobby, or do you have other creative hobbies that you like to be involved with?
I mean, before I was ever a hairdresser, I was a visual artist, drawing and painting. That was my goal and my passion my entire life since I was like a child.
I never knew that.
I, at 7 or 8 years old, decided to be a visual artist, and I just knew that was my purpose in the world. But I think I went so much of my youth doing drawing and painting. By the time I was getting out of high school, I had my first year of private art school paid-in scholarships. Like everything I was planning to do, I was manifesting and capitalizing on. But, I started cutting my own hair and my peers' and friends' hair in school when I was like 13. But that was out of necessity. And I felt like growing up, I was, not always the most privileged or had the most opportunity or resources around me to make beautiful things as an artist. So for me, even drawing, it meant like, just using copy paper and a pencil around me, or scrapping cardboard to turn into a piece of art. Or for me, wanting better hair on myself, me cutting my own hair because I didn't like where my parents were taking me. So I think sometimes the best art comes from just being resourceful, or comes from restriction, when you're restricted on your tools or your materials or whatever. I think it forces you to be creative and still making beautiful things. If I didn't have access to a good hairdresser at 13 years old, and my dad either just shaved my head or gave me a bowl cut or took me to some shitty shop that could not give me the hair I wanted, I knew as a visual artist, I can emulate something and do something better than what I was receiving. And it was interesting getting into hair early in my 20s because the upside was that getting into hair gave me a very secure way of making money through my 20s. And that was beneficial because I didn't always have the same security or resources growing up to make things. But the thing that was lacking initially for me in hair was that I didn't have that creative outlet anymore. So for me, it's like, I think initially in hair, I had resentment for it because I didn't feel creatively stimulated. But once I came out of quarantine and I knew I wanted to pursue Editorial and Runway, that's when I really was able to tap back into my creativity. And so for me, I've acknowledged that being an artist doesn't mean you have to even have one particular medium. Like an artist maybe practices different mediums throughout their life or at one time, For me, wanting to get into Editorial and Runway, who was I going to get to photograph my work? Nobody was going to do it at first. So what did I have to do? I had to teach myself how to use a camera. And if I really even have to now, I can photograph my own work if I don't have a photographer there. Now, even a thing for me is like, I'm trying to get more even into videography because what's even better than just a photo, a still image, is an assembly of still images that make a video,
Say hi to the video, Bryon.
Hello.
I'm recording a video of this podcast. It's my first video recorded podcast.
There you go. And here I am so relaxed.
Get relaxed. That's the kind of vibes I want to bring to my guests.
Exactly. Yeah. So, I mean, as far as my mediums go, I'm so happy to be exactly where I'm at right now in my artistry. Like, yes, I still do practice some photography and how I capture the hair I do or capture my daily life. I think even as simple as like the hair I do on the day to day in the salon, that's my bread and butter and how I really pay my bills is going into the salon to do hair. But even when I'm doing hair in the salon, even doing maybe more everyday run-of-the-mill hair, it's still a practice of skill. I think even the way I communicate to my clients and stuff, wordsmithing or like communication is an artistry in itself. So being an artist just means that whatever way I am expressing myself or communicating to others or to the world through whatever mediums is art, So I feel like I practice my artistry in different ways all the time. But I love at the moment getting to do hair because if I was just drawing and painting still all the time, I'd be locked in my room all the time drawing and painting. And when I get to do hair, I get to make art that's wearable on people's heads, Like doing people's hair, people need their hair done. And in a fashion show.
What is it like interacting with human beings all day? You have to talk. You got to give a lot of your energy. I feel like some days I would be tired. I don't want to talk.
I mean, I enjoy people. Sometimes people are difficult. But the thing is, I'm pretty empathetic and I feel like connecting with other people is kind of just, the best way for all of us to feel human. So I kind of enjoy having that interaction every day. It helps me feel more normal in my existence and emotions, sometimes tending or taking care of other people or hearing other people's stories and stuff. Some clients are harder to deal with than others, but like for the most part, it just gives me exposure to all the different walks of life that are around me and helps me to become even more tolerant of others, but also and forgiving, but also, everybody has a redeeming quality,
Yeah, I guess you do experience people of all walks of life. Bryon, you say life is short, don't have boring hair. Or maybe it's another quote, but you stole it and you say that.
Life is short, so yeah, you shouldn't have boring hair. But also, it's like, maybe if you don't care about your hair that much, then that doesn't really matter. It's not super relevant. But also, sometimes maybe somebody's never had hair they really enjoyed. And maybe if somebody has hair, they are given some hair that they might enjoy, then they might feel more opted to, explore and dabble in that,
Yeah, what are your thoughts on feminine and masculine expression through hair and like how one regards their view of themselves, their identity? Like how important is identity to hair?
Identity is everything. Hair grows out of our head. It's the crown and adornment that literally grows from our head. It's the accessory that we always have, I think when it comes to expression and self-identity especially with clothing or hair or modifications, whatever, like for one, I don't have a men's haircut or a woman's haircut. I just offer a haircut service and you're paying for the hour with me. So the thing is, if a guy, why do men's haircuts typically cost less than women's? Maybe either it requires less work or it's less time or whatever. But at the end of the day, it's like if a guy comes in with long hair and he wants it shaped or trimmed, that's no different than like a long haircut on any other individual. And also if femme woman or, comes in wanting like a short pixie cut, that's not far off from like a men's cut. But at the end of the day, synonymously, it's all just haircuts. And so that's how I charge, because at the end of the day, whoever comes in, however they identify, it's like what's relevant is that they're receiving the same service for, whatever it is they wear,
Yeah. Do you find any other inequalities in the realm of hairdressing between men and women?
Oh, I think an obvious one is that like men in general just kind of rule the industry a little bit. And unfortunately, just because, I don't know why. It's like the only industry we like excel in over like any other. Yeah. Like most of Vidal Sassoon wrote the like earliest like hair knowledge and education, and like everything ever since has been like stemmed from or based from his original teachings. And it's like most of that stuff isn't even accurate, like, or true anymore.
Yeah.
So it's crazy because we just trust that. And yeah.
If you could see any improvements in equality in the realm of hairdressing, what would you say those would be?
Oh, I don't know. Just that, like, maybe, you know, there'd be just, I don't know, equal opportunity and equal shine for people of equal brilliance, you know. Sometimes I feel like certain people just shine, and maybe not always for the right reasons or because their work is truly the best, you know.
Yeah. Do you have any events coming up in Dallas?
I kind of taking a small break from like doing any other collaborations at the moment. I'm trying to kind of put together some of my own personal projects I'm trying to work on. But event wise, I think actually I'm pushing it forward to maybe mid-May. But I'm going to be teaching a class at Hair+Industry in Dallas, my salon, and I will be teaching a Fashion Week blueprint foundations course, which will include a hands-on styling technique portion where I will simulate kind of the template and environment you would work in at Fashion Week and show you techniques that you would use at pretty much any fashion show, and also how you could adapt these techniques to fit like behind the chair applications or even editorial photo shoot type applications, whatever, and just different approaches with that. But also there's going to be a lecture portion, which is going to be kind of the blueprint and all the information and knowledge you would need to know to confidently book work for Fashion Week and confidently go in and do well at any fashion show, assisting or working at one. All the information I've acquired in the last 13 months, but nobody taught me. I went and figured out on my own. So it's like I think about a young Bryon going to his first fashion show in New York 13 months ago and him having no idea what was going on. But if somebody at the time was offering this class, I know that young Bryon would have paid any amount of money for it. And so I just know that this class and everything I'm going to include in it is going to have everything I've learned in my 3 New York fashion weeks. And like this past, spring, I did my first Paris fashion week. And at this point, I feel like I've built quite the confidence and already connections and experience in this that like, I know there's others who would like to work on this type of stuff. And, there's no reason I shouldn't share this knowledge to them. It's just, I had to work to figure it out. So.
Yeah, you told me that you were going to do a collaboration with Louis R. He was a podcast guest here. He's a fashion designer out of Houston for some Paris magazine. Are you guys still going to do that?
I am at the moment still supposed to work on that with him. We're supposed to be doing that.
Yeah? What Paris magazine is it?
Sean magazine.
Nice.
Yeah.
That'd be really cool. They'll probably write your name as part of the team, right?
Don't 100%. I'm doing that. If I do it, I would be doing the hair for it. So in the publication, in the magazine, it would definitely have my credentials like put on it, which would be amazing.
That's dope. You can put that on your website.
Oh, 100%. That would be my first true published like work.
Cool. And do you have any advice for non-identified artists who are seeking to be more creative?
I probably have a few valuable pieces. One, just create, I think a lot of people are afraid of failing. Failure is part of the process of growing as an artist. You can only really even make improvements on your work a lot of the time through repetition and through failure. It's like a lot of us will judge our work before we even ever share it or even ever make it. We might think, oh, it's going to fail, so we shouldn't do it. And I know for me, I've only learned and been able to grow because I've made mistakes. And at the end of the day, I think as far as like actual piece of advice that might translate to is I'd rather regret the things I've done than the things I didn't do. So I'd rather make something and, change from it after than to have not made it and question what it could have been. Repetition, just keep working. It's like you can't judge your work. I say make 100 pieces of work before you even decide to judge it. And the thing too is if you make work and you're not happy with it, at the end of the day, what that really means is you're a true artist, because a true artist will always look at their work and acknowledge that it deserves to be better. At the moment that you think your work is its best as it's ever going to be, or you're totally content with your art, is when you've stopped growing, you know? I always do hair, and no matter if I do my best or not, I always will look back at it and think like, okay, this is what I might do better next time. This is how I might improve it. This, you know, and don't be afraid to just like practice, you know, like I know for me, sometimes I've found myself creatively at my best when I can just go into the salon on my day off and maybe, you know, just sit with a mannequin and play with it, you know, when I don't have any pressure or expectation on what I have to do, and when I can actually just play around and experiment, you know. Experimentation is extremely important. I think really what applicably in my own life as a artist right now that has become so important, and back to our original start of the our session today, was that I've really made it super important to have a sacred morning for myself where I do particular activities or things that set myself up for success that day. Rituals that help me. Because if I like sleep in, or if I get drunk the night before and I'm hungover and then I sleep in and then I'm running late going into work, or I sleep half my day away and then I wake up feeling like crap and then I'm not hydrated and I don't eat or work out or anything, it's like I'm not going to make my best work. Part of me making my best work means me operating physically and mentally at 100%. So then I have all the motivation, inspiration, and drive. And even like creatively, like I feel less creative when I'm, you know, hazy or like I don't have a clear vision that day, you know? So I think being an artist is amazing, but setting yourself up to make the best art is equally as important, you know, as just being like, I'm going to just start, you know, drawing or making something. Like making sure you're in the best headspace to make some good art, or also when you're in a bad place, being able to reach back to your artistry as a means of escape, hopefully, is important too.
Love that. Well, I hope with all that advice, everyone's out there just living their best creative life.
I mean, it's a journey.
It's a journey, man. You gotta love the process, and you can't beat yourself up too hard.
No, I mean, at the end of the day, learn from your lessons. Your lessons help you grow. You know, I know our generation, maybe this is an outdated saying, but taking an L.
Because you're so old and outdated. Give me the vape.
Is taking an L outdated?
Taking a loss outdated?
Taking an L.
Taking an L means taking a loss.
No, to me, taking an L means taking a lesson. Because a lesson doesn't have to be a loss. A loss is a loss if you don't learn from it. So if you're taking an L, consider it taking a lesson.
You did that on purpose.
L.
Yeah, taking an L. At first, I thought you meant taking me. I was like, excuse you?
That too.
Just take a lesson, take an L, and you're good to go.
Yes.
Well, thanks so much for being on. It was really nice to have a good conversation with you. And, you know, I always got your back.
I love you, Elle. Thank you for having me.
I love you too.
Thank you for giving me a platform to share any of my creative headspace and experience with our community, locally and internationally. And I'm excited to continue listening to your podcast and seeing it grow. I'm excited for people to hear our connections and conversations we've had. And thanks for having me.
Of course. Well, see you later, guys. Bye.
Bye.